Children of Absent Parents by Nicole Levitt and Annika Johnson. This lesson is to inform teachers, administrators, and other staff of possible risk of students of absent parents kindergarten to 12th. This presentation adheres to these ethical standards. Children of incarcerated parents.
The U.S. incarcerates more people than any other country in the world, which also means that we incarcerate more parents than any other country in the world.
Between 1991 and 2007, parents held at state and federal prisons increased by 79%. Children of incarcerated parents increased by 80%. Demographically, that's 1 in 9 African American children, 1 in 28 Hispanic children, and 1 in 57 white children with an incarcerated parent in the United States.
I remember it was morning. We woke up because we heard knocking on the door, but I didn't know if they were the FBI or the police.
I found out when my brother came to pick me up from school, because usually my mother does. When I got in front of my building, my mother was getting put in the car and she was yelling my name and she was like, "I love you."
All of a sudden, there was a knock on the door and 2 policemen just rushed in. They just went straight to the room, threw my mom on the floor.
It was just a lot of stuff. Like I was just crying. I didn't know what to do.
And I was confused, but I didn't know what happened.
As the time started going past, I cried for me being away from my mom.
It was like a part of me was missing. It was like a person that I was used to always being around was just gone, just taken away from me. It felt like somebody died. It wasn't a good feeling at all.
Shaquille says the confinement of his father felt like he too was incarcerated, doing time along with him.
Angry face, where I was really just angry at the world. Got into a lot of trouble in school. I had a lot of behavioral issues.
In 2011, there were more than 120,000 incarcerated mothers and 1.1 million fathers. Currently, there are more than 2.7 million children in the U.S. that have at least one incarcerated parent, and approximately 10 million children have experienced parental incarceration at some point in their lives. Some of the emotional issues children often face is chronic sleeplessness, difficulties concentrating, and depression. 16% of children develop temporary school phobias that make them unwilling to attend school for up to 6 weeks following their parents' incarceration. Others may react with anger, defiance, and a desire for retaliation towards those who reject and taunt them. Some international human rights advocates have called parental incarceration the greatest threat to child well-being in the U.S. Adults are punished, but so are innocent children.
Large concentrations of children who are living under these circumstances, and they go to schools, puts tremendous stress on schools. It puts tremendous stress on the caregivers who remain home with them. Lots of times their grandparents have to take on responsibility for these children. The children end up feeling responsible for the breakup of their families. So we're looking at tremendous emotional stress on these children, economic stress on the caregivers who remain, and we're looking at crises in communities. Children are left behind, don't form emotional bonds with parents. They need those emotional bonds to mature into adults who care about others, but those bonds are broken.
The San Francisco Children of Incarcerated Parents Partnership developed an 8-point Bill of Rights for children of incarcerated parents.
It includes points such as the right to visit and touch a parent, the right to be involved in decisions made about them, and the right not to be blamed for their parents' incarceration.
It's really no different than any other loss of a parent in terms of the depth of the trauma and the longing, except that it's not only unrecognized, but actually stigmatized. Instead of the community rallying around them, they often feel they have to keep it secret.
Children are likely to continue to be invisible victims of the criminal justice system.
Children of deployed parents.
That sense of serving something greater and being a part of something large that everybody has an equal share in, that camaraderie and that friendship is something that you just can't really describe or put words to. When you're in the United States, it's not as easy to understand the difficulties of a parent being deployed.
Tonight, military families and the stress of having a loved one on the front lines. That stress can be especially difficult for children.
Let me show you. Okay, I'll be back, all right?
We see them, the children of military families, as they say goodbye. But what happens to them during these tours of duty, especially those who've been through it more than once?
My father has been deployed at least over 8 times.
6 or 7 times.
I've moved 7 or 8 times.
4 or 5 times.
Why do we have to move everywhere? We're constantly moving and not knowing what's coming next.
Like every single day, it's just like, you're always thinking about him, thinking about like how his day went, what it's like where he is and what's pretty much going on with everything that he does. It's kind of like you're worried like all the time, you know?
Having people who don't understand you whatsoever.
Most of the kids didn't understand what I was going through. They were like, oh, your dad's military, that's no big deal. That can't be hard for you.
It's pretty hard because when I moved out here from Minnesota, we were learning completely different things in each core subject. And I got out here and they were like way ahead of us. I don't really know who my dad is at this point because he's gone so often.
I felt really sad that he was going to be leaving for a while, though I know that there's nothing we could do to stop it, and he really had to. Some of the challenges are like when my dad goes away, so I have to take care of little siblings and make sure like my mom feels okay.
I'm scared that I may not be able to see them again, and I'm scared that if they do come back, we might have to move, and one parent might not like that.
For kids, finding a way to cope is hard. A recent study shows children ages 3 to 8 are 10% more likely to see a doctor for mental health issues when a parent deploys. Issues range from stress, anxiety, and acting out in school.
We have noticed that with deployment, we have more aggressive type behaviors in our school than what we used to.
A new report from the American Academy of Pediatrics says children whose parents served during wartime are at an increased risk for social, emotional, and behavioral problems.
Pediatrician Keith Lemon started hearing complaints of head and stomach aches and other stressors.
It's taken us a while to really understand or to notice in children that a lot of their symptoms may have some relationship to their parents' deployment.
Currently, 43% of active service members have children. Of those, a majority are between the ages of 0 to 5.
I've had 4- and 5-year-olds whose dads or moms were deployed in the first or second year of life. And we're discovering some of those children are quite aggressive. Some of those children are having some hoarding behavior where they're like hiding food under their bed at 5 and 6, and there's really no reason. So sometimes some children have a difficult time with the attachment if it occurs early in that attachment phase of 1 year to 5 years. Older adolescents, 15, 16, 17, these young people have actually crossed the line where their behavior either got involved with alcohol or drugs and sometimes criminal behavior.
During the last 10 years, about 2 million children have been separated from a parent on active duty.
Children of deported parents.
I'm asking myself why? What did I do? Why is this happening to me? I think of my kids, my wife.
Ray's situation is more common than you might think. According to the most recent data available, 1 in 4 people deported between 2010 and 2012 were the parents of U.S. citizens. An estimated 150,000 U.S. citizens lose a parent to deportation each year.
We had already put his I-130 in, and I was thinking maybe 9 months, a year at the very most.
Yeah, and that was?
That was 2 years ago.
Their youngest was only 5 months old when Ray was deported. Their middle child is autistic. He started throwing tantrums after Ray was deported that made it impossible for Casey to leave him at school. Casey has homeschooled him ever since.
On a Tuesday morning, February 28th, my dad was detained in front of me on my way to school. It was the hardest thing to watch, but I still went to school. I knew I would have someone to support me there.
5.9 million children currently live with at least one undocumented parent in the United States. That's 1 in 8 of California's children. Unfortunately, these kids end up in foster care. 5,100 children in foster care are due to detained and/or deported parents. The rate of deporting parents is rising from 8% to above 22% at the last census.
9-year-old Jason Garcia says he was asleep when his father was taken away and sent back to Guatemala.
He was trying to work, and the police took him, they reported him, and I missed him. I wish he could come back.
So, I mean, they would remind me every day. I mean, my dad had like this whole system, you know, here's where I hide this in case anything happens, that we love you very much and that we wish that this situation was different for us, but this is our reality. Times I was coming home from school and I got home and their cars were there and dinner was started and the lights were on, but I couldn't find them. So it was really hard. It was really hard. And then the neighbors came in
And that's how you found out that they were gone? The neighbors told you?
Mm-hmm. They were just like, I'm so sorry, but your parents were taken away. I broke down, you know. I remember I hid under the bed because I was afraid that somebody was gonna come for me. I don't know who that someone was, but I was just so scared. You know, it's like, what do you do? And then I'm so scared for them. It's like what they're going through, you know. My parents are going to jail and for what? You know, I didn't consider them criminals.
Effects of absent parents. What all these children of absent parental figures have in common is the trauma that comes along with an absent parent.
Across the general population, 1 in 4 children will experience a significantly traumatic incident before they're 4. The number that really gets your attention is that 50% of those children will experience that 3 or 4 times.
Neuroscientists have found that trauma causes arrested development in children's brains. This leaves them vulnerable to triggers that adults around them often don't see.
It might be a smell, it might be a touch, it might be a sound that that child experienced during that traumatic event that is a reminder for that child of what happened.
This was the case for Desiree, who suffered traumatic events, including the incarceration of her mother and the death of a close family member. Desiree was also the victim of abuse. The incident was so traumatizing that her father, Derek Kazee, said he saw a total shift in her personality.
Before everything, like she was a people person. She loved being around people. After the experience happened, she tended to turn off. Like, she didn't really want to be around adults. She didn't want to be around kids. She just wanted to be at home, her safe spot.
It's hard to play chess in a hurricane. And to expect kids to calculate math when they're calculating where they're going to sleep tonight, to ask kids to have perfect penmanship when their life is a mess, to ask kids to read a story when they can't even find words to describe the story of what's going on in their own lives, it's not reasonable.
Kids who have been traumatized have always been in the school system, but they get labeled as behavior problems usually, or they get relegated to special education classes, and teachers don't have any kind of training for them to recognize that a child's been traumatized.
Trauma and adversity can affect any child, regardless of age, economic class, or the community in which they live.
Where trauma comes from isn't always something horrific. It can be everyday things.
Action plans. What can we do? Build relationships, advocate for your students, and become a trauma-informed district. There is no more effective neurobiological intervention than a safe relationship. Trauma-informed schools.
Teachers and administrators are increasingly turning to compassionate school and classroom strategies to improve the social and emotional well-being of students, strengthening families and communities.
We're seeing there are decreases in acting out behaviors in school. We're seeing kids increase their attendance in school. We're seeing just a general more positive climate and feel. And I think we're seeing educators finding a new sense of hope.
There are 2 models for trauma-informed schools. The sanctuary model, which focuses on changing organizational culture, and risking connections, which emphasizes on the importance of rich relationships, respect, information sharing, connection, and hope. Trauma-informed self-care.
Supporting students through empathy and empowerment is a critical part of compassionate learning strategy. But teachers themselves need support as well.
After the murders and the different tragedies that happened here in the lockdowns, I didn't know how to help myself and help the staff. So what this training did was let us put ourselves as a priority and take care of ourselves.
We really believe that it's an ethical obligation of educators to make time and energy to practice being well so that when they enter the school, they can be fully prepared and equipped to engage with kids.
Trauma-informed strategies.
I really feel that you cannot teach the mind until you reach the heart.
The book, The Heart of Learning and Teaching, represents years of study and extensive interviews with researchers, scientists, teachers, and administrators in the field, as well as students and their families. Its 6 concise chapters focus on the relationship between trauma and learning. Compassionate strategies don't just benefit students and teachers. Their reach and positive effect extend to families and entire communities.
If children start thriving and families get things that they need and stresses are removed and people are educated, and the whole community thrives because the people in it are thriving.
Preschool kids in trauma-informed schools.
Every year, thousands of children in this country are expelled from school before they reach kindergarten. In fact, studies show that preschool children are expelled at significantly higher rates than those in kindergarten through 12th grade, on a program in Kansas City, Missouri, that is trying to stem this trend by looking beyond the classroom to the issues these kids face at home.
It was about 2 years ago when my grandson, Jeremiah, at the age of 2, witnessed his father shoot and kill his mother in her car, and then it was a murder-suicide.
But does the mommy go on the bus?
No, please. And him and his brothers were strapped in their car seats in the back seat.
We're going to the hospital. At Head Start Trauma Smart, our goal is really to help young children, their caregivers, their family members, the teachers who work with them, really understand how trauma affects early childhood development and then what to do about that.
In Head Start Trauma Smart, safety comes first.
The first thing you have to do is make them feel safe. And if you're not making them feel safe, they're not going to learn or improve. So most of how we teach starts with complete social emotional. I'm here, I will keep you safe, help me keep it that way.
This is where I'd like you to sit today to make sure your body is safe.
In training programs held year-round, Head Start Trauma Smart teachers learn to validate extreme emotions, referred to as big feelings, using calm and quiet voices. They're also armed with practical and cognitive tools to help kids soothe themselves.
In our room, the safe spot is in a really quiet corner, and it's filled with kind of pillows and blankets, and then we have a calm down box. There's several sensory things that they can play with. We have squishy balls, we have sunglasses.
All of these methods are aimed at quieting the tidal wave of emotions that often overwhelm these kids.
You want your mommy? Well, I know you want mommy, but you know what? You're here with me and you're in a safe place. We went through the Head Start Trauma Smart program for, I believe it was a whole year of training. You want to sit by Raymond? Did you ask Raymond if it's okay if you sit by him? Hey, Joseph, you're having a big feeling right now. And then I'll validate. It's okay to have that big feeling, but what can I do to help you? Want to breathe in and breathe out.
To be focused on a child, you have to understand they come in context. So they come in context with a family.
We just want to equip you as parents with as many tools as possible to support your child.
They come in context with their school.
Your emotional state becomes the emotional state of your classroom.
And so you must include their family and the people in their school. So that might be the bus driver that greets them every morning.
We are the first people that the children will see in the morning. I really applied what Trauma Smart taught me.
Within Head Start Trauma Smart, there is a very healthy dose of that whole self-care piece, because the adults in the environment, the parents and the staff, were struggling themselves with secondary trauma.
So what face is this? Sad face. Can I see your sad faces? Let me see your sad faces.
Oh, those are so sad. Let me see your mad face.
And you have to have enough within yourself to be able to respond appropriately with the child.
Head Start Trauma Smart is still in its early stages, but it's already showing promising results. 100% of the children enrolled have moved on to kindergarten. It's this kind of success that Heron says she hopes will boost the program's growth nationwide.
If we can pull this off across the country, the dividends will be phenomenal.
We know that we can't stop bad things from happening, but we can really make a difference so that people can survive those bad things and then know how to thrive after they've happened.
Now that I have those techniques from Head Start Trauma Smart, I can breathe, I can teach, I can deal with the social emotional issues on one hand and I can teach on the other and still have a classroom environment that's a community, that's learning, that's caring and safe for our kids.
Kahoot!